That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. Swimo? I don't think that's going to catch on so much.
No, I like it though.
But I think it's fun.
It's good.
So Tannon Grace, he's playing pretty stock Rug Delver. We got Nibble Mongoose, Tarmogoyf, Delver of Secrets. Your spells in Lightning Bolt, Brainstorm, Stifle, Force Will, Ponder, Brainstorm, obviously. And he's got a couple of Miser's cards. He's got 1 Chain Lightning, 2 Spell Pierce, 1 Spell Snare, and then 2 Gataxian Probe. Little Threshold Enabler.
Yeah, tie the room together.
Get a little info, so he's got to play around. So that's a little fun addition.
I like it.
And Gerry T, Charlotte's Bug, pretty much the same thing that he did well with the Invitational.
Yep. Finally eschewing the hymn to Torox that I cut quite a while ago that he insisted were good. Those are finally gone to the board. But besides that, pretty straightforward. All the Thought Seizes and Decays, Brainstorms, Ancestrals, Deathrights, Tarmogoyfs, Charlotte's Agents, and a couple Baleful Strix, very similar to his Invitational winning list. Jace the Mind Sculptor still capping the top there. And, yeah.
He's going to start off with a Thoughtseize right away. We're going to see a Brainstorm in response. Now, Tannon, I think he has a Delver in his hand that he chose not to cast, which is a little bit surprising. Got to get back in the Legacy Mind frame. So I haven't covered a Legacy Tournament for about a month and a half here.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We're going to see a little bit of Brainstorm action. You see a Force Will over there in his hand. Now, when you're playing Rug Delver, you typically want to get off to a fast start with either a Nibble Mongoose or a Delver of Secrets and kind of get the show started that way. My thought process here is that Tannon wants to Brainstorm on 1, play Delver with the card that he's going to reveal, already have it set up. But I still think that leading with Brainstorm untapped land, he's bluffing like a Stifle and other things here. I think you just want to play that Delver on turn 1.
Usually yes, but I'm pretty sure that Tannon knew what Gerry was playing.
Okay.
Knew that the Thoughtseize was very likely coming, and if you're gonna sequence the Delver next anyway, then you're only really missing 1 point because you're gonna for sure flip it now.
Sure.
If you want to, and see, like, now he can go Delver with Pierce up or Delver Waste and have the flip available to him.
Yep.
So I think that this is really because he knows Gerry and he knows what Gerry's playing.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, the default play, if you will, is to just lead with the Delver.
And I'm going to assume that you like the Brainstorm here in response to the Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I mean,
fine.
if you play the land and pass without playing the Delver, and then don't Brainstorm in response to the flip, then that would be pretty bad.
So if he Brainstorms, the draw for the turn is a Tarmogoyf. So I may have misread his hand, because now he's shuffling away with the Polluted Delta.
It's also possible he just likes the Tarmogoyf more.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe there was no Delver at all. Maybe he's happy with the Tarmogoyf, because now that there's a land in the graveyard, there's a Lightning Bolt down there, and there is a Thoughtseize. We're looking at a 3/4 Tarmogoyf, and we will get our Tarmogoyf dice out on the screen for you guys, so we can get that good to go as well.
I love that thing.
The Tarmogoyf die or Tarmogoyf?
The Tarmogoyf die.
Okay.
Tarmogoyf I could, give it to
I could do without, yeah. Until he gets new artwork, because I still look at the artwork of that Tarmogoyf and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I know there's just a monster there.
Yeah. I had I saw on Reddit somebody outline it in red, and I still couldn't figure out what it was.
The new one, very accurate picture of
Yes,
Tarmogoyf.
it's a lot more clear.
It reminds me of the Super Bulldozer in Transformers 2.
Yeah.
When it's eating all the dirt.
It plays out similarly as well.
Yeah. But that loses the fight. Tarmogoyf normally doesn't do that. You're going to see a Thoughtseize here. Gerry's going to sacrifice that Misty Rainforest, so he's going down to 15. Lightning Bolts are gone, leaving Tannon with the Spell Pierce, a Forcible, and a Wasteland. And now Deathrite Shaman has shown up to the party. And Gerry's Thoughtseizes here, he might be inducing a little bit, saying, hey, Tannon, counter this Deathrite Shaman. I really need it. Or maybe not, and Tannon draws a Chain Lightning, so...
I think I know where the Chain Lightning is.
I think the Chain Lightning is going to take care of that Deathrite Shaman, because Gerry's playing in such a way that I think he's trying to show that it's important that his creatures don't get Lightning Bolted. Chain Lightning is going to take care of this. So, maybe he's inducing, maybe he's not. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I think anytime it's Force of Will, as long as you're, not a combo deck, it's sort of like, if they force your thing, you're totally fine. Like, they pay a life and spend 2 cards, including an extra blue card, which the blue cards tend to be pretty good.
Sure.
So it's like a pretty powerful 2-for-1 to be able to get just a normal creature Force of Will. So I think that Gerry's fine with pretty much any of his spells getting Force of Will, but he just doesn't want Tannon to be able to straight up 1-for-1 him cleanly with a bolt on his Deathrite, which is what ended up happening anyway because he had a Chain Lightning off the top. But now you're pretty much forced to force a Tarmogoyf to get yours through, and Tannon is hellbent against Gerry's pretty full hand. He's got 4 cards.
Yeah,
which, in Legacy, that's pretty full.
Yes. Gerry's looking at a Jace the Mind Sculptor. He's got a Brainstorm. He's got an Ancestral Vision. He just drew an Abrupt Decay. And honestly, this is where Gerry wants to be. You know, he wants his deck to be empty-handed, and this is where Rug is typically at. Is where, you know, I always describe Rug to people as it's this deck that has like these, you know, weird ways of controlling the game, but you know, you move on to like turn 3 or turn 4, and they've got like 1 or 2 cards left in their hand, like a guy, and they're like, come on, get me home.
Yeah, and they
Gerry,
really need to ride that one threat all the way home.
Gerry draws Abrupt Decay to take care of that Tarmogoyf, and now Tannon's taking a look at his hand, and it's like, I don't have a threat to play.
Yeah,
this isn't good for me.
If Gerry didn't have that Abrupt Decay, he would have had to spend his turn main phase Brainstorm with no fetch and no extra land. You know, he would have had to draw basically Abrupt Decay and a fetch land. He would have been in a pretty bad spot, but drawing Abrupt Decay or, you know, having a removal spell there is pretty insane. Being able to clean it up. 7 is a reasonable life total because, you know, it's about chunks of 3, as you can tell from the Nimble Mongoose. And now he's brainstorming, looking for a wall of some kind, a Tarmogoyf or Baleful Strix to sort of get in the way of that Nimble Mongoose. And it looks like he did draw a Tarmogoyf, so I have to assume that's what's going to come down here.
1 and 2, and there it is. No days here for Grace. So Nimble Mongoose versus Tarmogoyf, not a fight. Nimble Mongoose often wins. Spell Snare, you're a little late to the party.
A little late. And, you know, Gerry's got the Ancestral ticking down. He's got the 4th land in the form of a Creeping Tar Pit in his hand and a Jace on top of his deck. So he's actually looking pretty good in this spot. You know, 7 is not the healthiest life total, but it's about chunks of 3. The Nimble Mongoose hits for 3, the Delver hits for 3, the Lightning Bolts and the Chain Lightning all hit for 3. So we do see that Tannon has a Lightning Bolt in his hand. So 1 more isn't going to kill Gerry unless he takes another point of damage.
And we know that Tannon already is down 2 Lightning Bolts. You guys can't see the graveyard right now, but Gerry Thoughtseize those Lightning Bolts on turn 1 and turn 2. Now he's going to Thoughtseize. He's going to go down to 5. Basically saying, how many Lightning Bolts do you actually have left? Grace is going to have to cast his Lightning Bolt in his hand.
Yeah.
Go upstairs.
Gerry's... you definitely saw the look on his face. He's not too happy about this, but he knows that he's got to get clear the way of like a Pierce or whatever so that he can play as Jace the next turn. So he's not super happy to go low, but now 3 bolts and a Chain Lightning are gone.
Yep.
So he's fairly safe. There are still a couple cards in Tannon Grace's deck that would just outright kill Gerry, but you know, he sculpted the game well to have the Jace, have the Goyf for the Nimble Mongoose, and Ancestral going off next turn. This is exactly where he wants to be. Except for the fact that he'd like to be a little higher on life, potentially.
Yeah,
but
just a smidge. As you're going to see the Delver Secrets come down again. Thompson going to try to resolve Ancestral Visions. No Stifle, I don't think.
No, he stopped him. I'm pretty sure you stifle this trigger. So the way that Suspend works, there's a bunch of triggers going on. There's the trigger to remove the counter, and then once you remove the last counter, there's another trigger, and Tannon Grace lets it go. There's another trigger that says you can cast this now, and then you put the actual spell in the stack. So you can actually trigger that, and then it just stays in exile with no counters on it forever. But he chooses not to do that. It looks like he's actually looking to stifle the Jace bounce on Delver and hope that Gerry just bricks off on his Ancestral and he can kill him, because he knows that the long game does not favor him. Even if he stops the Ancestral, there's still a Jace, which is pretty impossible to outrun.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically, Grace there is saying, all right, you can resolve your visions, hope you miss on your 3 cards. Maybe you draw some additional Thoughtseizers or just some garbage, who knows. And my Delver flips into Insectile Aberration. I stifle your Jace on summon, and I'm able to get through the last point of damage. Now you see Thompson's going to Fate Seal, so Jace is actually ticking up. Here comes the Polluted Delta. That's a 5th land, so he can actually hardcast Forceful if he needs to. But you see Thompson's hand. He's got that Charlotte Sage in his hand. He's got the Abrupt Decay at the ready, the backup Jace and the Forceful. Sitting at 2 life, while it is precarious, it's not 0.
Yep.
And I don't know, I have a feeling that he's probably going to end the game at exactly 1.
Yeah. It is definitely looking that way. I mean, Gerry knows how to sort of navigate these positions. Like, if you can't win from this spot as a bug player, then you should probably be trying another deck, because these are the spots that these decks really look to get to.
Yep.
So even though, you know, it looks a little precarious for him, I'm sure he feels in complete control.
Grace can't make an attack here. I mean, you could make the argument of, all right, I'll just send that Delver and that Nimble Mongoose there and get you to 1, try to shut off one of your fetch lands, shut off your Delta when you're at 1, and shut off Forcible's alternate casting costs, but he does not make the attack. Abrupt Decay is going to take down that Delver Secrets, and I like that.
Yeah, he would have gotten kind of blown out if he had gone for it.
Yeah, I like him just using the mana on this turn, so he's like, all right, I got one thing to worry about now, which is Nimble Mongoose, which I've got unlocked because of Tarmogoyf, and I know Grace can't get this out of the way, so now I have free reign to cast my Shardless Agent. I'm going to Cascade. hit a Baleful Strix, draw a card, put that little Death Touch flyer into play.
That's pretty interesting. He actually had the opportunity to Jace Brainstorm and put Ancestral Visions on top and then immediately cascade into that, and he chose to go for a random card instead and Fate Seal. I think that's just like since he does feel in such control that he wants to sort of end the game and make sure as best as he can to keep Tannon Grace from drawing his last lightning bolt, you know?
Yeah, he wants to cut his outs.
Yeah, exactly.
And now by doing that, the cascade into the Baleful Strix is perfect, right? Because he doesn't really, obviously, Ancestral Visions off of Charlotte's Agent is what Gerry's deck is somewhat based around, but by hitting Baleful Strix, now he can actually start sending in with the Tarmogoyf, cut his clock with the Fate Seal, and cut his clock as far as, his life total is concerned. So now he's coming at 2 angles of attack, and, if you've watched any Legacy, this is what Jace does, this is what Tarmogoyf does.
Yeah.
Together, they are just brutal, because they're going to get you dead very quickly and control your outs.
Yep. Tarmogoyf makes it so you can't kill the Jace makes it so you can't kill the Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And meanwhile, both of them are actively trying to kill you in different ways.
You see Grace's hand, he's got a couple of stifles. He's going to draw a mystery card. See what this is. He's basically drawing, it feels like it's basically a 1 hour. He's got 1 lightning bolt left. He's already used 3 and a chain lightning. Now he's going to wasteland, which really doesn't do very much.
Yeah. Yeah, he's drawing to that where Gerry's just like sitting on his Force of Will. He knows that there's very little that Tannon Grace can actually do here. He doesn't know necessarily how many like chain lightnings or forked bolts or fire ices or whatever are in the deck. So he's Fate Sealing and holding Force of Will. That's why he's not cracking that Polluted Deltas, because he's just wants the extra life so he can alternate cast his Force of Will. And even the Baleful Strix getting a little saucy here, as that will that will cut a full turn off of the clock, and that is game 1 to Gerry Thompson.
So Charlotte's Bug is going to win game 1 over Rug Delver. Again, both these players are 2-0 thus far. Again, Tannon Grace typically does play Rug Delver. Gerry Thompson typically plays Charlotte's Bug. And you saw at the beginning of the game, Gerry underneath a little bit of pressure, and he's definitely the control deck here, where Grace is the aggressive deck. There are some matchups for Rug Delver where they are the control deck, typically against combo.
Yeah.
But in this matchup against Charlotte's Bug, where the game wants to go long if you're Thompson, with your Visions and your Charlotte's Agents and your Baleful Strix, he's the control deck, and it's his job not to die very quickly. And Grace's Disruption and Spell Pierces, Lightning Bolts, and these Stifles, these need to, you can't end the game with 2 Stifles. You need those cards to actually do something in the matchup.
Absolutely, and that is why it is the tempo aggro deck. You're playing these cards that are just horrible top decks, because if you have them in the early turns, they can really disrupt your opponent. But as you saw, the deck runs out of gas pretty quickly,
sure.
And if they can't close the door, with those first 11 or so cards that they have access to, then their top decks for pretty much the rest of the game at that point are going to be pretty bad, or at least worse than the Shardless Bug deck, which thrives on playing off the top of its deck with just every single card is super high impact. And we saw there that game, Gerry sequencing his Thoughtseizes, he's kind of turning the bolts into like lava spikes, because he's taking the damage from the Thoughtseizes and the fetches anyway, to help protect his Deathrite Shaman. Tannon getting a little lucky to draw the removal for the Deathrite Shaman, because the Deathrite Shaman would have turboed into the Jace a turn earlier, and Gerry knew that the coast was clear from his Thoughtseizes, so he would have slammed Jace that turn and bounced the Tarmogoyf, and then played his own Tarmogoyf and bounced the Tarmogoyf again the next turn and just completely taken over. So Tannon was kind of lucky that turn to draw an answer for the Deathrite, and then Gerry, a couple turns later, returned the favor by peeling the Abrupt Decay without having to brainstorm into land and Abrupt Decay to be able to deal with the Tarmogoyf before it got 1 more hit in, because that 1 more hit would have proven fatal to Gerry pretty much under any circumstance. And we saw Gerry ending the game at a theoretical 1 life with his Force of Will. So that 1 more Tarmogoyf hit definitely would have been the difference had he had to, say, play a Creeping Tar Pit as his land and Abrupt Decay the next turn or whatever. And this matchup is one of the more quintessential matchups of Legacy. There are so many decks and so many viable archetypes, but these are 2 that have been around for a while and are fairly commonly played and pair off pretty evenly. I would say that Charlotte's Bug usually has a slight edge, but it's just like a 55-45 matchup that gets played over and over and over. So these guys being sort of the experts in their given fields, I'm sure have both played against each other's decks multiple times, probably even played against each other multiple times, and so they sort of know the ins and outs of the matchup.
Also pretty important too, like, for Grace's deck playing Rug Delver, it really depends on what threat he draws. Tarmogoyf is something that Gerry can answer with his own Tarmogoyf, with Baleful Strix, and with Abrupt Decay, thank you. Same can be said for Delver of Secrets to a lesser extent. Baleful Strix trades there where Tarmogoyf does not. But, the big card here, I think, for Grace is Nimble Mongoose, just because it does have, like, Shroud.
Yeah.
And the fact that it won't die, and it's very easy for him to make it a 3-3, and then give the beatdowns that way, and dodge a lot of Gerry's removal, and, Jace bouncing it, and all these other things. Tarmogoyf is going to trump it, but I think it's Grace's job, and he knows this, to try to keep Tarmogoyf off the table.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf is obviously the best card in the Sharpest Bug deck against Rug Delver. And being able to blank a Nimble Mongoose is one of the main reasons. I mean, Baleful Strix is like the only real card that can theoretically answer a Nimble Mongoose, but the Baleful Strix is so fragile, that just gets bolted out of the air or whatever, and the Nimble Mongoose keeps attacking. Like, you can have your 2-for-1 or whatever, you still can't deal with this 3-3, But Tarmogoyf is the big deal, not only because just Tarmogoyf, like, almost entirely stabilize the board by itself, but if you ever get a second Tarmogoyf, then you all of a sudden can turn the corner just like that.
Yeah, start attacking.
Yeah, the first Tarmogoyf stabilizes, the second one turns the corner, and when you have two Tarmogoyfs, you really turn the corner. That's like a 2-turn clock on its own.
Yep.
Very often. So Tarmogoyf definitely one of the key cards, and we do see a Spell Snare, a Miser Spell Snare in Tannon Grace's deck. He's definitely going to look to have that, and the other key card for the Tarmogoyf is the Submerges in the Rug Delver sideboard. They often have 2 to 3. We see 3 here from Tannon Grace, and that is one of the cleanest answers, the most efficient, and most tempo-positive answers to Tarmogoyf available.
Other cards in Grace's sideboard very quickly. Ancient Grudge, which is not going to come in here. Vendilion Click, which may join us. A Crow's and Grip, 2 copies of Pyroblast, an Envelop, 3 Surgical Extractions, 1 Sulfur Elemental, and 2 Rough and Tumble to go along with those 3 Submerges. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Pyroblast come in here. There's Jace, the Mind Sculptor, there's Baleful Strix, there's Charlotte's Agent, Ancestral Visions, Brainstorm. There are plenty of cards for that card to tag, but he's not going to overload his deck with them, which is why you only see 2 in the sideboard.
Yeah, you don't want to sort of dilute your deck with that type of effect, sort of reactive effect. So it's definitely reasonable to bring in a couple, but you can't be the guy that's bringing in like Pierces and 4 Blasts and Snares and having Stifles. Just like, no, you need to be more proactive. You need the Lightning Bolts and the creatures. That's far more important.
Yeah.
And even though Tannon Grace isn't playing the Thought Scour version, he's got Gitaxian Probes instead. In the Thought Scour version, I actually like boarding in 1 Ancient Grudge in this matchup, because you can randomly hit it off of a Scour for value, and it can shoot a Baleful Strix out of the sky, which Gerry has 2 main and a 3rd in the board,
Sure.
And it's definitely coming in here because Tarmogoyf and Nimble Mongoose are the 2 most important cards.
So we're going to see a Delver of Secrets versus a Deathrite Shaman for right now, because with Delver of Secrets trigger on the stack, Grace is going to cast a Brainstorm, set this up so that Delver is going to flip into Insectile Aberration. And you see him looking at the rest of his hand. There's a Wasteland there, among others. You're also going to see a Stifle in Grace's hand. So after he does resolve this Brainstorm, I think we're going to see this flip, and we do with another Brainstorm here.
Yeah, I generally don't like the sort of upkeep Brainstorm to trigger your Delver. Because it's like a fairly low percentage play, because you're only getting 2 extra points that turn, and like there's also a chance that your guy could have just flipped without your Brainstorm help, and then you're kind of just down a Brainstorm for no reason.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of like it here because Tannon was on the play. He had everything he needed, and he's going to follow it up with a Wasteland, and he wants the Delver to get past the Deathrite. If the Deathrite weren't in play, I'm not sure Tannon Grace would have made that aggressive line, because he's only getting 2 points. But now he's getting the full 3 and making sure that he doesn't have to worry about flipping it on the coming turn. So I think I actually like it here.
The thing that kind of scares me is, you go through this work of flipping your Delver, you're using that Brainstorm, as you said. You're spending a resource, and probably one of your best resources in your deck, if not the best one, in Brainstorm to flip your Delver against a deck that just simply does have Abrupt Decay, and he's going to take down the Insectile Aberration with that. So, I mean, maybe the thought process could be that, I have to get in my hits when I can with my Delver, versus, and you're the aggro deck, so you want to try to get your hits in. But, I mean, now, by Grace going Wasteland your land, Gerry's like, all right, activate Shaman, Abrupt Decay your guy. it's like, what have you really done this game?
The Wasteland was super low impact there, with Deathrite sort of equalizing the mana. That's not exactly where you want to be. You want to, you know, if possible, you prefer to sequence it, you know, kill your Deathrite and then Wasteland.
Yeah.
Because that's the same thing. That's still 2 Stone Rains, but it's much more efficient. But Tannon Grace did not have that option available to him, did not have a Lightning Bolt. Looks like he's got a couple Stifles, which are also pretty bad. And the fact that he Brainstormed, put cards back, and was able to shuffle some away and left 2 Stifles in his hand, to me says that his hand was really bad.
Yeah, his hand does not seem like it's great right now. And
if it's like turn 4 cards to keep or Stifle, that generally is not where you want to be.
You know, he put 2 lands back with the Brainstorm, so his land is definitely hand heavy. I think he was relying on those Brainstorms to get him out of some trouble. They don't look like they've done that, as you're going to see Thompson remove a land, cast a Brainstorm of his own. Deathrite Shaman going to be able to control the graveyard of Grace's Nimble Mongoose. We'll get a graveyard count for you guys as we go across this game, because Grace is keeping his sideboard, or excuse me, his graveyard off screen. So there's a couple cards down there right now. And as we go, we'll see when that thing does become a 3/3 with Threshold for you guys, as Thompson is going to resolve a Brainstorm here and basically figure out what he wants to do and how he wants to pace this game.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, is how to pace it, because he's got sort of a wide range of options of sort of the decision tree of how he can play out this game, with a bunch of Force of Wills and Ancestrals, and, you know, the Ponder to pitch to it, or Tarmogoyf, you know, Tarmogoyf with the counters, because he knows that that's the most important card, so we can just sort of reverse the roles, you know, play the counter slivers version of his own, a game of protect the Tarmogoyf, if you will, and that's usually fairly effective, especially when you have the Deathrite Shaman to really turn the race in your favor.
And we're going to see in the draw step here, we're going to see a Vendilion Click here from Grace. See if Thompson's going to let this resolve or not. You see Force of Will ×2 in his hand, along with 2 blue cards in Ponder and Ancestral Vision. So he can choose to fight over this if he wants to, and you're going to see him do that. Force of Will removing Ancestral Vision. Going to take 1 and go down to 16 to take care of that Vendilion Click. But Tarmogoyf now is going to grow a little bit bigger. Actually, no, Delver Secrets being in the graveyard is going to prevent that. So it's going to stay as a 3/4 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure that he had to fight there, but with the second Wasteland in his hand, he can actually just, like, double waste with Deathrite activation, beat down with Tarmogoyf, and really just put Tannon Grace in a rough spot.
Yeah, you're going to see probably like a Wasteland. You know, one of the plays that he can make is, you know, Wasteland both of the green sources.
Yeah.
If he wants to, or Wasteland a green and a red, you know, cut him off with Lightning Bolt. Have that Bayou available to be able to start activating that Deathrite Shaman, either half of it, whichever one he deems necessary, and actually have Force of Will plus Ponder in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah. And that is,
Yep,
exactly
so here's your
what we're
wastings.
gonna see.
There go the green sources for Grace. He's going to pass a turn back. Shaman at the ready. Grace going to draw a card. It is a Pyroblast.
And this is exactly what we were talking about, diluting your deck. Like, these cards that are super narrow and, like, pretty pretty good in a certain type of game. If you're ever caught with it in the other type of game, then it's really, really bad. Like, your top decks are already bad enough, but when you dilute your deck with these types of effects, then these types of game states get even harder for you. And everything's just going Gerry's way right now.
So Tarmogoyf's going to come across for some more damage. Deathrite Shaman at the ready for an activation. Grace is going to draw a card here. See what he's found. You do see his lands there with Polluted Delta and a Volcanic Sea. Nimble Mongoose looks to be the draw for the turn, so he's going to sacrifice this. He's going to push himself down to 13.
There we go. Now we get to see what Tannon's working with in the yard there. And another Nimble Mongoose. Normally, when you have like 2 Mongoose versus a Tarmogoyf, that's like a standoff.
Yeah.
Because the threat of a double block, and then you also like can't really race, but the Nimble Mongoose obviously can't attack into the Tarmogoyf. So you have a standoff, except the Rug Delver deck is drawing to like submerges and stuff for the Tarmogoyf, or like vaults, whereas the Shardless Bug deck doesn't really have a clean answer to the Nimble Mongoose often. But all of that is irrelevant with Deathrite sort of keeping the Nimble Mongoose in check, turning off Threshold so that the Tarmogoyf for Gerry Thompson can keep attacking.
The draw this turn for Thompson is another Tarmogoyf. So the first one's going to come across here. Gerry kind of, looking at Gray saying, I'm kind of offering up a trade if you want to take it, depending on how big that graveyard is. Now you're going to see him remove a land, cast Tarmogoyf, and he does, again, have Ponder and Force Will in his hand. Thompson, no interest in casting Ponder right now, just wants to have the blue card. Grace is going to extend the hand, and Gerry Thompson's going to move on to 3-0. Shardless Bug taking care of Rug Delver.
This is a pro tip for you guys. You can't Pyroblast or Stifle a Tarmogoyf.
Unfortunately, you can't.
Well, technically you can Pyroblast a Tarmogoyf. Excuse me. It doesn't do much.
It is a legal play.
Yeah, it is a legal target, but yeah, you see those narrow cards when really Tarmogoyf is basically the only thing that matters in the matchup, which in similar matchups, a lot of times Force of Will is boarded out, but the Shardless